Welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right in. Today, we're looking at one of the most bizarre, fast-moving, and intensely passionate political phenomena we've seen in recent history. I want you to imagine a massive nationwide political movement driven by millions of young people that is intentionally named after a household pest. Sounds crazy, right? Well, that is exactly what's happening right now in India, with the unprecedented rise of the Cockroach Janta party. We're going to break down how a simple internet parody absolutely exploded into a physical protest movement that's threatening to shake up the world's largest democracy and potentially rewrite the rules of its entire education system.
Okay, let's dive into this. The entire movement traces back to a single, explosive moment in the Supreme Court of India in May 2026. During a hearing, Chief Justice Surya Kant made a remark comparing some social media users, activists, and unemployed youth to parasites, and specifically to cockroaches. Now, he later clarified that he was misquoted and was really only targeting individuals using fake academic degrees to enter noble professions, but honestly, the damage was done. The label stuck. The youth of India heard the custodian of their constitution call them pests, and it ignited an absolute wildfire.
Section 1. The Cockroach Origin Story, from Supreme Court insult to viral phenomenon.
The speed of this movement is just staggering. Let's look at how one digital strategist sitting thousands of miles away in the US reacted to that specific courtroom remark. On May 15th, the remark was made. Literally the very next day, a 30-year-old digital communications strategist named Abhijeet Dipke, who was quietly living in the States as a Boston University grad looking for a job, decided to completely flip the insult. He jokingly put out a call on social media asking, "What if all cockroaches came together?" He launched the Cockroach Janta Party, or CJP, as a satirical parody of the ruling party. Within days, this joke resonated so fiercely that the CJP hit over 22 million Instagram followers. I mean, they rapidly surpassed the follower count of the ruling party itself.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how thoroughly they leaned into the satire at the very beginning. The CJP launched with the tagline, "Voice of the Lazy and Unemployed." They literally listed their membership eligibility as needing to be unemployed, chronically online, and able to rant professionally. They branded their ideology as secular, socialist, democratic, and lazy. It was this digital safe haven of dark humor for young people who just felt totally left out of mainstream politics. But as we'll see, that humor was masking some very deep systemic pain.
Moving into Section 2, the education powder keg. The grim reality of India's job and exam market. To really understand why a joke about a cockroach mobilized millions, we have to look at the ground-level pressures that are just crushing India's youth right now. 40%. I want you to really let that number sink in. According to recent studies, almost 40% of India's graduates under the age of 25 are unemployed. The reason that cockroach insults stung a generation so profoundly is because millions of young, educated Indians feel completely abandoned by a job market that systematically fails to absorb them. This isn't just a minor economic hiccup. It's a systemic failure that completely dictates the harsh reality of being a young person in India today. And you know, the path to even getting a chance at a job is often through a highly toxic exam industry. Consider this stark statistical reality from the 2026 NEET medical exams. 2 million students took this grueling nationwide test, all competing for just 130,000 available places. Families are going into crippling debt to pay for private tuition just to give their kids a fighting chance. To put that into perspective, there is actually more spent on private tuition in India than the government's entire higher education budget.
Then, in early May of 2026, this pressure cooker absolutely exploded. The NEET paper was leaked to the highest bidders, and the government was forced to scrap the exam entirely. Think about that. 2 million exhausted students were suddenly told they had to retake it. Tragically, the devastation of this systemic failure resulted in reports of at least a dozen students taking their own lives, simply unable to face the sheer trauma of sitting for that exam a second time. This was the ultimate breaking point. And this brilliantly illustrates how analysts view the broader crisis. As Pratap Bhanumeta pointed out, the youth view these education systems not as accessible ladders of opportunity, but as crushing instruments of social control. The system essentially tells them to do and die. So when the Chief Justice's comment happened right in the middle of all this exam chaos, man, the youth were primed to explode.
Section 3, from satire to streets. The joke becomes a grassroots protest. The CJP realized they could no longer just exist in the digital realm. They had to take this fight to the real world. So you've got this stark contrast. Online satire on one side, funny manifestos, viral Instagram memes, but the offline reality, it got incredibly harsh, incredibly fast. Founder Abhijeet Dipke flew all the way from the US to India to lead their first physical protest on June 6th. Suddenly, these self-proclaimed lazy youth were staging physical sit-ins and hunger strikes in the sweltering 40 degrees Celsius heat of New Delhi at the Jantar Mantar Observatory. They also quickly partnered up with major established student unions to organize on the ground. As they took to the streets, their demands shifted from satirical jokes to highly specific political action items. They launched a nationwide Pradhan Go Back campaign, demanding the immediate resignation of the union education minister. They demanded sweeping systemic reforms to public examinations to prevent future leaks. They wanted justice for the students who died by suicide. And, notably, they began pushing for a right to employment law. These aren't just protests anymore. They're demanding a fundamental rewrite of the educational contract to secure a future where degrees actually guarantee a livelihood.
Section 4. The hunger strike escalation. A movement reaches a dangerous climax.
By late June and into July, the situation escalated from a peaceful sit-in into a literal matter of life and death. Let's walk through this timeline. On June 28th, prominent environmentalist and education reformer Sonam Wangchuk joined the protest and declared an indefinite hunger strike. As July rolled on, the government actually attempted to block the CJP's social media accounts, citing national security, though the Delhi High Court later ordered them unblocked. By mid-July, after 21 days without food and losing over 9 kilograms, police forcefully removed a deteriorating Wangchuk to a hospital against his will. In response to that police action, the CJP intensified everything, planning a massive youth march directly on the Indian Parliament for July 20th. Unsurprisingly, the nation became deeply polarized over this. On the supportive side, you had figures like Sonam Wangchuk proudly calling himself an honorary cockroach. Veteran activists and prominent opposition politicians threw their weight behind the youth. On the flip side, the government reaction was incredibly strict. The education minister dismissed the whole movement as a B-team of disruptive elements. The state attempted a digital crackdown through account blocks on national security grounds, and they deployed heavy police presence to monitor and eventually clear out the physical protest sites. Let's move to and see how this builds in Section 5, Future of the Youth, what the cockroach symbolizes for India. Beyond the immediate protests on the streets, this movement signals a profound psychological shift in the socio-economic fabric of the country. To be called a cockroach is to be told that you are dirty, dispensable, and best kept out of sight. It's a bug that survives in the cracks. But Gen Z took this deep humiliation and weaponized it into a badge of visibility and defiance. They basically said, if power sees us as pests, we will proudly swarm as pests. And this incredible psychological shift happened in a country where post-pandemic economic realities mean over 800 million citizens currently rely on food handouts just to stay afloat. And the macro-level impacts are mounting fast. We are now seeing calls from the protesters for the resignation of Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself. What we're really witnessing here is a widespread, deeply rooted distrust among the youth in traditional democratic channels. Because think about it, when the education system you are told to trust completely fails you, every other institution naturally comes into question. The CJP is a symptom of deep, generational anxiety over systemic economic inequality. It marks a completely unconventional and highly disruptive shift in how Gen Z engages with politics. So the crucial point is this. If a joke about a cockroach can mobilize millions of young people to take to the streets, face down police, and risk their very lives on hunger strikes, what does that tell us about the absolute breaking point of India's education and economic systems? The CJP might have started as a parody, but the pain driving it is as real as it gets. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on how this generation continues to fight for its future.